All right. So, let's see. Is it? There we go. All right, guys. So we're back. It turns out using promotional images to promote an anime that's pretty good violates copyright. So I'm going to be playing Baby Mode, Risk of Rain, while Anthony helps guide me like a blind man through conversation and conversation. It really does kill like momentum and just the ability of us to talk, and it drives me bonkers because it's like I want to talk about subjects, we want to talk about good subjects, but it's just not happening. You know what I mean?
For the stupidest things they cut off, too. Like,
Yep.
really, really ridiculous things.
Oh yeah. And it's like, what can we do about it? It's like, guess what? I guess what are we supposed to do? Like it's I don't know. Like never talk
It
about
is
that
what it is.
stuff.
Yeah, do what I call the Digibro solution, which is something completely random in the background. I'm sure he's not the first person to do it, but he's the first I saw, and it seemed like a good idea.
I mean, yeah, like this is baby mode. I'm still bad at it. Baby mode, Risk of Rain 2. So it's like, no problem, guys. We'll keep this stream up while keeping it entertaining for everyone. And the stream's still live, so we're doing it, bros. We're making this happen.
Okay, so topics of discussion today were number one, for people don't know who I am. I'm the Superversive writer at Castalia, and I've become the anime guy. Not that I am not still the Superversive writer, but most of what I write about is now anime, and I try to write about either only Superversive anime, or if it's not Superversive, to discuss why it's still worth talking about. Number two, we were going to talk about Gleipnir because it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And number three, we were going to talk about what makes a quality analyst, for you generally YouTube analysts, but I guess criticism normally. However, I mean a little bit more than criticism. I mean real, like, deep dive analysis.
Oh
And I
yeah.
bring this up because I've been watching older Digibro videos, and Digibro, despite my many disagreements on several foundational issues with criticism, like I disagree with him about literally core subjects related to analysis and media interpretation.
Especially
But
concerning objectivity, is that right?
yeah, that's the big one. I disagree with him strongly in terms of he doesn't believe in such a thing as objective. I disagree with that very strongly, and I think that in theory should be something that affects how you write your report and say your reviews and analyses and things. But he is an excellent analyst when he actually puts in the time to write and think through something. So I wanted to discuss that too. But let's do the first topic of discussion, which was Gleipnir.
Oh yeah.
Banner, you caught up on Gleipnir.
I'm caught up on the manga and the anime. It's fantastic. It's honestly one of the funnest shows this season. Um, yeah, I can't
I'm
really,
halfway through episode 5.
and that's just about what's out at this point. I think, right?
Yeah, the fifth episode is the latest one. I'm halfway through it. I'm very pleasantly surprised by Gleipnir. I didn't think I would like it at all, but it's actually quite good.
Oh yeah. Like it's original. Excuse me. Originally, I thought it was kind of just this edge lord, kids killing each other, nudity, etc., etc. The usual Japanese horror fare. But it actually
Right.
kept evolving past that, where characters had actual depth and reason that honestly you just don't get that often. in these types of shows. Usually they just go for the gratuitous route or for the safe route. Like Darwin's Game is a similar show with a safe route to it
Right.
because it was edgy, but the right type of edgy.
Yeah, Gleipnir. What interests me about Gleipnir is, first of all, I have a thing with certain Japanese protagonists that for some reason I see pop up very commonly, which is that they're total losers, and for some reason I'm supposed to like this sort of character or whatever.
Right.
Uh, this guy was the same way when Claire started going on about, oh, I see, and for those who aren't watching the show, the two main characters are, can't remember the boy's name,
Claire and
Shuichi or
Shizuku.
something?
Oh yeah, Shuichi.
Shizuki, thank you.
Yeah, I think
It's
it's Suichi.
Shui.
I can't remember.
Okay,
He actually
I'll look it up
develops
right
more
now.
as time goes on.
Yeah, normally those sorts of characters don't change as much as I would like. That's one of the reasons I really, really don't like Rising of the Shield Hero, but that's a long. And before you jump down my throat about how much he's changed, whatever commenter, we've talked about this in the past, and it's a long conversation. It's Shuichi, by the way.
Shuichi.
So there you go.
Shuichi. There's
Unlike other Ichi, he's not very reliable. Jojo, come on.
I
It's a
know.
Jojo rep. Okay, but seriously though. Uh, I did not like Shuichi. I really was rolling my eyes when Claire said something about how like he's actually a heroic person deep down or whatever, cause he rescued her, and I'm like, this kid's a pussy. Yeah. But
Is that how
we're
I
five
sound?
episodes in. Yeah, nice. We're 5 episodes in, and he actually has already developed a bit.
Yep.
I mean, in noticeable ways.
And there's actually like the
What?
later you go on in the manga, it's revealed that there's a reason why he's such a blank slate. It's like, wow.
Yeah, because at this point in the story, like they show him showing up in school, and now suddenly, he said, "I wear contact lenses now," and he's suddenly like more social and outgoing in school, and girls are
Mm-hmm.
starting to notice. And I'm like, I kind of enjoy that they did that.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's almost unfair because this is his role in the narrative. But whenever he has to play Buzzkill to Claire, it can be a little bit obnoxious.
She's kind of a
But that's not
psycho though.
really. He is, yes. So it's kind of unfair. I mean, it's just from a character perspective, he really needs to be that way. Especially because, like you said, Claire is definitely a psycho. They're currently in episode 5. This is where I'm at. Like I said, I'm halfway through the latest
Mm-hmm.
episode, and they were marching up into the mountains to look for more coins. And for people who don't know the show, random people have been given coins by an alien that turns them into monsters. And I don't, for some reason, they're trying to find the coins. I'm not sure if they actually know for sure, except that the alien told them to do it. And everybody's like, it must be good.
So like
But
it's that they grant wishes. So you
okay,
gather 100 coins together, you get a mega wish.
okay,
So
understood.
like you know like the more you gather, the better it gets. That sort of thing. So it's like you saw
Yeah,
we've seen some people who only had like one coin. They're pretty powerful. But then you see people who had a lot of coins and they're just out of this world. And then there is one person so
right.
far who's gotten 100 coins, which is like mega spoilers.
Don't let me don't let me know what's up in the manga because I haven't read the manga.
Oh no, I'm just
However,
saying that like it is all that. Like it is no exaggeration what the alien is offering. Like there's no
okay,
like the subversion isn't in the wish giving, it's in what becomes of the wish. You know what I mean? It's a straight thing of the genie, rather than a subverted genie. I guess we'll say.
Right. Yeah, that's the alien was that was actually a really interesting scene because the alien pointed out, and with some justification, I'm really not a bad guy. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm not the one committing all these actions. I just gave people wishes. They did what they wanted. You know, you're you shouldn't blame me. You shouldn't be blaming me for it. He's like, I'll even help you out if you ask me to. I'm not being malicious about it. And he kind of has a point. But yeah, right now, this is the point I'm at in the anime. They're marching up the mountain. Uh, and what I was going to say about Claire, in terms of you mentioning that, like, Claire's actually kind of a psycho, uh, her first reaction was, so if there's a monster at the top of the mountain, obviously we're going to. Goes, hopefully we see him first so we could kill him. And Shuichi's immediate reaction to that is, why? Basically.
Yeah.
Not in as many words, but it was something along the lines of, we don't even know if he's a bad guy. Why would we kill him? And then Claire's just kind of like, I figured you'd say that. Yeah, you're right. Maybe they'll help us. You know, fine, we won't kill him immediately.
And then they meet someone who's actually like pretty powerful, Sanbei, who's a great character. He doesn't show up that often, but when he does, it's always glorious.
Right, that's about where I am at right now in episode 5. But the question, of course, is Gleipnir superversive?
No.
Can you call Gleipnir superversive? I would
Well,
agree. The answer to that is no.
so here's the thing. It's not. I wouldn't call it a subversive piece, though. That's the thing. Like it's got these heroic elements to it, but it doesn't. It isn't a object of subversion like some of the other things tend to be. Like to compare it against, say, Techno Whole Eyes, which is a very violent, gritty, underground cyberpunk thing. Everyone's trying to kill everyone, everyone's having, sex with everyone else, and then it's like, various characters lose limbs and nothing matters and stuff like that. In Gleipnir, things do matter quite a bit to various people, and there's vengeance to be wrought. But it's not heroic. It isn't
Yeah,
superversive. It's just kind of a story. Like, you can write heroic vengeance stories. All you have to do is make the protagonist have a moral center to him that is in constant conflict with him as he takes his actions. Not to the point where it's like, dude, just listen to your conscience already. Like, not like that. I'm talking more in the sense of, there's more to him than killing his uncle who killed his dad, sort of thing. Which Hamlet, of course, had more to him than than that. Like, people want to write a vengeance story. It's like, oh, I'm so consumed by vengeance, but it's like, what's your day job though? More vengeance?
Dread Pirate Robert.
Oh, okay. I thought so. I thought it'd be something like that.
But yeah, Gleipnir, here's what I would say about Gleipnir. Like you said, I wouldn't call it a specifically subversive show. In that, I would say that in Gleipnir, there is such a thing as good and bad and good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
They exist. It's not, the message of the show is not there's no such thing as good or evil.
Yep.
Now, you could say the message of the show is that people will sometimes, who you think are good can give in to temptations or whatever and stuff like that, but it's not the same thing as not recognizing that good and evil exist at all.
Yep.
Nobody is excusing the character's actions as fatalistically. Shuichi in the first episode nearly gives in to the urges of the monster suit and assaults Claire.
By the way,
And
he turns into a monster suit.
yeah, specifically a monster suit too, which is hilarious.
Yeah, that's actually pretty funny. enter into Soichi. Please no. At least only make it girls. It's a dude this time.
Yeah, that the the very, very, very blatant sex metaphor of Claire entering Suichi. I
It's
mean,
actually more
I do
explicit
have
in the
to,
manga.
I do have to hand it to them for not even pretending that that wasn't what they were doing. Yeah. Like they're using specifically words that you would use in sex. They're just totally straight about, yes, this is a sex metaphor.
Right.
So kind of interesting. I feel like as I'm watching it that there is a point to that, but I'm trying to put my thumb on what exactly it is. I suppose the idea is that them becoming one, the metaphor is about what sex is, and I suppose in a weird way that's a positive message because it what a sexual relationship is and does and how it connects people. So in a strange backwards way, like the fact that they turn this whole joining two into one thing into a sex metaphor is kind of morally upright. But
Yeah.
that's really, I don't know if you want to call this, if it stretches the right word. But
Oh,
that's
Soichi's
really
doing
a
the stretching. He's stretching
uh,
out. He'll fit anyone in there. But it's a uh then that's just
I
not even like
do think that's
exaggeration.
an interest.
What?
Oh yeah, I do think that's an interesting way to think of it, though. The idea that looking at it as a sexual metaphor doesn't mean the real is a recognition about the importance of sex in a relationship and how that and how that changes the character of a relationship between two people, whether you want it to or think it will or not. You know, Claire and Shuichi are no longer friends with benefits.
Right.
They are indelibly joined at the hip, as it were, which is Claire's whole point, actually. Because when Shuichi tries to tell her, no way, I'm out, she goes, okay, tell you what, how about this? And goes, if you, whatever you do, I will do it with you no matter what it is. Go, and that includes killing yourself. Goes, if you kill yourself, I will kill myself. And then she jumps off a something, I don't know, a building or something,
The usual
and she makes
dramatic
sure
thing.
she catches it. Yeah, it was a pretty interesting scene. It was a pretty good scene. Uh, so I think that's a really interesting way to put it. This idea that sexual relationships are not something that you could just shrug off, I guess.
Yep.
And
It's
right now, go ahead.
it's a pretty important sort of thing for us humans as well as just kind of like a metaphor for stories. Like what happens when you have a character who's connected and then they this is an important point because I've paused the game. I don't know if you've noticed this. Where these characters whems when you have that connection or if another character wants this connection in a story. I'm sort of plotting, like these two characters get intimate. Nothing, I never show anything with these things, but it's implied, and then he kills her mother because she was one of the plotters that assassinated his father and took his kingdom away. Like how do you deal with that? He still holds a flame for her, but she's in no way going to be able to look at him the same. Or if you have someone else who's in love with another character who he can never have, like um how do you how does this person interact? It's all fine and dandy until, the guy's like, yeah, I'm going to murder him. You're going to what? Like there's a lot to it, you know what I mean?
I get what you're saying. Gleipnir, though, yeah. I feel like there's some. When I watch Gleipnir, I guess the impression is that I feel like it has something. And I'm always trying to put my finger on what exactly. but it doesn't feel like it's pointless. You know what I mean?
I do.
Darwin's Game feels like it's edgy because it's pointless.
Right.
It's edgy because people like edge. Because
Right.
edgy, I guess, is entertaining, and in a way, it can be. I mean, there isn't anything inherently wrong with it if that's the sort of thing you like and whatever, though I do think it is inherently childish if you like
Yep.
it just for being edgy, but younger viewers or whatever, I mean, go to town if you like Darwin's Game. I don't really have anything specifically against it except that I just don't think it's that good.
I mean, it isn't
But
that good. I mean, it's got all the check boxes. You know, it's got the waifu. It's got the, uh, like character with small ability that's actually quite powerful. You know, like it's nothing if not what's the word I want? Where it's like something, but it doesn't do anything with it. Um,
I know what you're trying to say.
it's nothing if
It's
not follow the leader. Like that's the spirit of I want to say, but there's a word we have for it. Hmm. Eh.
I get your point though. Um,
Derivative. There we
Actually,
go.
you know what that reminds me of? Yeah, there we go. Derivative. You know what that reminds me of a lot? And I say this, looping around to Digibro because I just watched this review again, Darling in the Franxx.
Mm-hmm.
If you what Darling in the Franxx, for those who don't know, was a mech show that was a joint effort by Studio Trigger and Studio A1 and A1 Pictures, I should say, Studio Trigger and A1 Pictures. And it was a story about how teenagers having sex powered mechs.
It's
That's
not
not even like
exaggerating.
I'm not even saying it in a particularly edgy way. That's literally like the plot of the show. There's I'm not embellishing on it. So the thing about Darling in the Franxx though was that in a weird way, it really wasn't edgy at all.
Yep.
Like there, there was nothing about it, nothing at all about it that was interesting. And the video that I am referring to of Digi Bros was called Darling in the Franxx' Trigger Baby Mode. And the idea behind it, and this does connect back to Gleipnir and Darwin's Game, in fact, this has a very close connection. Uh, the idea behind that video is that Darling in the Franxx was ultimately not exactly a bad show, a solid 5 of 10. And having watched the first 15 episodes and then saying I heard the second half was bad, so I'm not going to watch it, um, having watched the first 15 episodes, I can concur with that. It really wasn't a bad show. It had some nice action scenes. I kind of liked how the mechs looked.
Mm-hmm.
Zero Two was a pretty good character, I guess. She was she was solidly written. You know, there was no glaring writing flaws in her characterization. There were no holes. The world building was unspectacular, but all sorts of things like that. The problem that Darling in the Franxx had is that it wasn't actually saying anything new. The
Mm-hmm.
point of Darling in the Franxx, it was meant to appeal to a certain specific type of viewer. And the thing is that that type of viewer is the exact same type of viewer who watches Sword Art Online and projects themselves into the Kirito Asuna relationship, or any other light novel adaptation where the viewer projects themselves onto the main character who gets the girl. The only thing that Darling in the Franxx does is it projects a much more specific type onto there. Zero Two is somebody who is broken and desperate and is looking for somebody to be her rock and throws herself at them. And this person is somebody who would normally not be involved, but the girl is so desperate for any sort of human connection and she believes that this person is the perfect one for them, so she won't let them go.
And then
Right?
she
It's a
murders
very
them.
Zero Two doesn't murder him.
No, she doesn't murder him, but she murders all the other ones.
Oh, well, she beats them up.
No, she kills
She
them.
doesn't.
She eats them.
Oh, you mean you're talking about like the previous people who use the mechs in the show?
Yep.
Yeah. None. I thought it wasn't intentional though. I didn't think she was murdering them. I thought it was accident.
I don't know.
But
Unless
whatever.
unless that booty had something to do with it. The booty
That's
was
what
the
I thought anyway.
mastermind all along.
That's what I thought anyway. Whatever. Not the point. Uh, the point I'm making here is that what Darling in the Franxx was doing was selling the same sort of fantasy that Kirito Asuna is selling, or Clanad is selling. Except that Clanad is a little bit more competent at it than most, but
I
Clanad
was
is
about to
something that
slap
I
your
feel.
whore mouth. It's like you better not badmouth Clannad. Come on, dude. Come on, dude. Come on, dude.
Oh, I have a lot to say about Clanad.
Uh,
I have a lot to say about Clanad.
all
But
right, that's fair.
after after this. Uh, the point is, it's the same sort of fantasy to the same general audience.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a little bit more hyper focused than most. And there are other shows with that focus too. If you want, I don't watch enough anime to say so. I'm going off what Digibro said when he pointed out that there were shows that did that same sort of character and that same sort of fantasy, but much, much better, with a lot more self awareness and exploration and recognition that aspects of it weren't healthy and it wasn't going to end well and blah, 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 blah. So,
But what do they know?
Darling in the
Our love
Franxx,
is real.
yeah, really. So, the point I'm making here and how this connects back to Darwin's game in Gleipnir is that Darling in the Franxx didn't exist to make a real point.
Mm-hmm.
Darling in the Franxx existed and was as edgy as it was because teenagers like the edge and otaku losers who watch that show would really like a girl to throw themselves at them. And if the girl is broken and needs help, then you get to be the hero. I don't want to be mean to all of these nerdy guys out there and say that, oh, they wish they were broken. I don't think that precisely, but I think they do wish for the opportunity to be the hero.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Darwin's game appeals to a very similar base fantasy, just on a slightly broader scale than Darling in the Franxx did. You project yourself onto the hero. Now, let's go on to looping around to Gleipnir. Why does Gleipnir exist? In a sense, it actually has a shockingly similar premise to Darling in the Franxx when you look at it in broad strokes. It's essentially a mech show, and it
Yep.
absolutely is. The
With mixed
main
in with
character,
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
yes, I would. In fact, I would say that Gleipnir is 100% a mech show, and if you think about it from a, I guess, overhead perspective, you know, where you're not like a super fan of the series, it's actually kind of hard to deny it. But the main character, who turns into a costume that can be entered by somebody else and then controlled, is the mech.
Mm-hmm.
He just happens to be a mech with a personality, but that's not unique. Yeah, there's nothing
Right.
unique about that. So he's the mech. And so, like Darling in the Franxx, we have a mech that is powered by something that is a very, very overt metaphor for sex. But what is the difference between Gleipnir and Darling in the Franxx? Claire is even kind of a similar character to Zero Two, and Soichi is kind of a similar character to the main guy of Darling, whose name is literally Hero, by the way.
Ugh.
If you wanted to get even more of that, that's what they were doing. His name is literally Hero in Darling in the Frank.
Never name your character hero unless they're a Greek
Yeah.
philosopher.
Okay, to be fair, in Japan it's a legitimate name, and it's not the only time I've heard it. However, I do think it's a pretty funny. It's a pretty funny thing that the main character is somebody who you're meant to project on, and his name is actually Hero. But I'm being a little bit unfair. Either way, though, the main characters of Gleipnir are actually very similar to Darling in the Franxx, again, in broad. Shoichi is somebody who is pretty unassuming in real life, actually kind of a loser. Uh, there is another girl in the school who likes him, but is not as interesting or outgoing
Or
as
talks to him.
as the Claire. What was that?
Or talks to him, honestly. Like she has done practically nothing all show.
Yeah, this character also existed, though was a lot more interesting, to be fair, in Darling in the Franxx, though, a character who had a thing for the protagonist, even though the protagonist was completely ignorant of it, and there was also no real reason for them to be interested in the protagonist. In the
She got
excuse in
cucked.
yeah, the excuse in Gleipnir was they were childhood friends, right?
Hmm. Oh, so here's the
And
thing. Here's
I
the thing. That it's okay. No, no, I won't spoil it for you. I'm saying that there are
okay, how
other
about this?
groups of there are other childhood friends running around that Shuichi is a part of, and that they are far more interesting than this chick who may or may not have been a childhood friend.
Well, I think the idea here is not so much that as the role she fills in the. Because again, as a counterpoint to Darling in the Franxx, she fills a similar role to the girl whose name I can't remember because who cares in Darling in the Franxx.
Right.
And the girl and the Darling in the Franxx girl who, I just said all of that, but she was actually not a terrible character. She was probably the most interesting character after Zero Two. Uh, she fills a similar role. She has a thing for Hero, but she's kind of boring.
Hmm.
And she also doesn't really have the courage to actually tell him that she has a thing, but it's sort of implied that it's there. The point
Oh.
is, this much more exotic girl is the one who walks in and takes control of the protagonist's life, grabs him by the horns and says, now you and I are together and there's nothing you could do. Once again, parallels, actually very striking on broad details. So, why is Gleipnir better? Because Gleipnir is better. There is no question about that. And I would say that the reason, so far at least, through 5 episodes, that I would call Gleipnir a better show than Darling in the Franxx is self-awareness.
Yeah.
I think that the idea is that Darling in the Franxx, like I said, it was meant to appeal to that teen, that teen to preteen audience who wanted to project themselves onto Hero specifically.
Hmm.
Nobody wants to project themselves onto Zero Two because Zero Two was broken. At best, they could already see themselves in Zero Two and maybe sympathize with her, but you weren't meant to project onto her.
Well, no, guys aren't. Girls did. There was a lot of Zero
I
Two
think it was
cosplay.
more that Yeah, but I think it was more that girls related to her, which is not the same thing. Guys
Ooh.
projected onto Hero. Guys wanted to be Hero. Girls felt like Zero Two already. They related to Zero Two. Nobody
Okay.
related to Hero. Nobody had the situation that Hero had. They wished they. However, there were people who, to be fair, this is a real thing, and I'm not actually saying it's a problem, who experienced abuse and had that sort of personality, and some of them became thoughts. And that is a problem. Not all
Absolutely.
of them, but some of them. And they became literal man eaters. And somebody who was as broken as Zero Two was, I mean, you could see why she would be a very popular character among girls. But no, she was not meant to be projected on, she was meant to be related to. In Gleipnir, I don't think you're really supposed to project yourself onto Shuichi.
Yep.
I think that Shuichi is a character who, when we first meet him, is not like, the first thing we see him do is assault someone, and then even though well, no, the first thing we see him do is rescue someone. then he almost assaults them. And to be fair to poor Shoichi at this point, he was giving in to the instincts of the monster, and he did not. He was able to fight it off. So I'm being a little bit unfair to Shuichi, but he's also kind of a whiny bitch.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not a very likable character, and he's not portrayed as a very likable character. He looks like a nerd. He's scrawny. You know, he's terrified of girls and girls talking to him.
Hey, they're
He
scary,
gets
Anthony. They're scary.
yeah, he gets blackmailed really, really easily. You know, uh, and the point is that when Claire kind of forces herself into his life, you're not supposed to look at this and go, yeah, man, relationship goals. You're supposed to look at this and go, this is a fascinating dichotomy and situation. I want to observe where it goes.
Yep.
Because it's not a healthy one.
Oh no, absolutely not. Like, so Zero Two's brokenness kind of made her aggressive, flirty, which isn't too far from real life for some girls. But the thing is that that's like on the thought spectrum. Like Claire's straight up on the psycho spectrum. Like there's no like argument of where she is on it. Like if you imagine like Zero Two on the thought spectrum and Claire on the psycho spectrum, they're like on each other's end.
I feel like they would not get. I
Oh,
was gonna say
absolutely
get
not.
along, but I thought no, they wouldn't. They would not get along at all. Claire and Zero Two would friggin' hate each other, which is pretty funny.
But it's one of those things where like repels like. Also like
Yeah, exactly.
also like a behavior I've seen like with some personal relationship stuff. There's a lot of paranoia there. Like these girls are insecure about what they are and what's going on. So when things come around that makes them go kind of like into insecure mode, it and by the way, vice versa, being super secure bores them in all the worst ways. It kind of creates conflict where there isn't any, and you kind of have to calm that down before it gets too goes too far.
Yeah, Claire actually, like, the more I think about the parallels between Gleipnir and Darling in the Franks, it actually becomes more and more interesting because, honestly, now that I've, really gone through it, Gleipnir is basically Darling in the Franks for, mature viewers.
Yep.
People who are old enough to know better than to want to be the guy who the crazy girl is in love with.
Yeah, you never
And
want
I
to.
know Claire is not in I know that Claire is not in love with Soichi. It's just the idea that, you know, hopefully you know that you do not want to stick it in that.
Well, who's sticking it in who? But it's more. How do I want to put it? It's more that she's in love with an idea of Shuichi, not so much he himself, because
I would
she.
say that Claire is pretty straightforward about her intentions. To be fair to her,
Right.
uh, I don't think she's ever lied to Suichi.
No, I,
I
I
don't
don't.
think she's ever been any. Go ahead.
Yeah, she has never been anything but honest with Shuichi. But what I'm talking about is more. How do I want to say it? Is more her view of the world in general and what Shuichi opens up for her. She would not be interested in Shuichi at all unless he had something to offer her.
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. She does seem like, at least by episode 4, when she thinks he's beheaded and then afterwards she gets really that she's grown genuinely attached to him. And I know
Mm-hmm.
you could go, well, because he was just killed, but afterwards she didn't have to, have such an extreme show of emotion with Shuichi afterwards. So it looks as if by that point she has become genuinely attached to Suichi. And even before that, when she first, when they team up without the blackmail, I guess, when she convinces Suichi to team up with her,
Mm-hmm.
like she seems to show a genuine sort of, if not affection, a kind of respect for Suichi when she realizes, like, oh, you're terrified of using this power, but you saved me anyway. Now I kind of get you a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we can work together. And of course, like I said, that was when I rolled my eyes the first time around, but I'm appreciating it a little bit because once again, I've started to realize that Gleipnir did not want me to react differently than I did. And it's
Mm-hmm.
become more and more clear now that Soichi's starting to transform himself. But I guess that's the thing. That's what makes this better than Darling in the Franks. What makes it better than Darling in the Franks is that instead of this being a wish fulfillment fantasy, it's not necessarily the deepest show in the world, nor does it pretend to be. But at the very least, what it is exploring is a what's such an unhealthy relationship would kind of look like, but in an abstract or allegorical sort of way with the monsters and things. It's not subtle, but it doesn't have to be.
Yep. And like here's the thing about these stories, like going subtle doesn't really give you anything. Like there's certain things that give you subtlety. Like you want the ending of a story to that's like about revenge and violence and murder and all that jazz to have a little subtlety, a little salt and pepper, you know what I mean? But it's not
Yeah,
hmm?
I know what you mean.
But it's not required for like a Darwin's game or something like that. Like there's mass media and then there's kind of like more art sort of things. Then this is more on the art spectrum. Like it has things to say. The characters have meaning. It's more than just, you know, look at this guy. He's like murdered a family, raped the daughters. Look at him. Look, he's so evil and then he dies crying or something like that when he was stone cold 15 minutes ago cuz it's episode 1 and you got a time slot to fill.
Yeah, there are certain things where subtlety just doesn't work. In a story like this that's exploring things like I don't want to say sexuality because sexuality implies, gay, straight, all of that stuff. So I don't think it explores sexuality, but it does explore sexual relationships and what that means to people and how it affects people, and it also explores just relationships generally and how they form and what they mean.
Mhm.
There's a very, very obvious and completely unsubtle and almost directly stated metaphor of a normal guy with a monster within him and whatever, you know,
Mhm.
and that being a lot of people in the show. But the flip side, and why I would say, while this show is not exactly superversive, it's also not subversive, is that I don't think the message is necessarily that, everybody is really a monster deep down. It is rather that, well, everybody has a monster within them, but it doesn't mean you need to use it to be a monster, which is
Right.
kind of the point of Soichi's character. He ends up becoming the moral compass to Claire, and they could use the suit as a force for good. And I don't know if I would call what they were doing good now exactly, but it's certainly Soichi is very willing to help people.
Mhm. It's 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 also that like if we compare him to a character who was just introduced from your perspective, Sanbei, who's the guy in the black armor, like he's a really honorable masculine man compared to Shuichi's kind of feminine man. Like there's characters who are explicit contrasts to one another.
Yeah, this is why I always said, and I know this sounds really off, but it connects. If you know the show Breaking Bad, I have no idea how much live action you even bother watching, but
Almost
Uh,
none.
everybody, everybody knows of the show at least.
Yep.
For the five of you who, in the world who may not, it's the science teacher who becomes a drug dealer to fund his cancer treatments. And then it turns out that he's actually really, really good at it and gets addicted to the lifestyle. One thing that I've always said about Breaking Bad is that Breaking Bad is in its own way superversive because I do think that Breaking Bad has a moral order. The message of Breaking Bad specifically has never been, in the end, there's no such thing as good or evil, and, what Walter, and none of it matters. No, Walter, it's about Walter turning into a bad person. And any good tragedy will be like that. If you're writing a good tragedy, then you will never be, then you really will never, you won't be able to say, oh, he did nothing wrong. It's more like a fall of Macbeth or of King Lear or of Othello. That's Walter White's fall. He
Mm-hmm.
had deep flaws all along, and this led to his collapse. All sorts of things. Basically, what I'm saying is, it didn't take a dump on the idea of good and evil. Walter
Right.
became evil, but evil existed. Now,
Yep. Like
even Walter
he
even
made
acknowledged
the
it in the
choices
show.
all along. Even when he
Yes.
was given other choices, he made the choice that was evil in our universe and theirs.
Oh, yes. It was, and it's a big theme of the show, in fact. I've read some stuff. I really liked Breaking Bad. I like Better Call Saul, which is its prequel even more. But I've read some stuff from the director, and there's sorry, an ad just popped up on my phone. That was weird. Anyway, I'm like scrolling Facebook, and then Queen pops up on my phone. I don't know. Whatever. The point is, there was a thing from the director where he was talking about, like, what's the moment that Walter, the main character, first broke bad. And he says, well, early on in the show, he offers him almost a literal deus ex machina. Two of Walter's old friends come in and tell him, okay, we've been successful. You used to be a part of our company and now you're not, but we know you're struggling. To help you out, we will fund your treatment. You know, we'll do you a solid.
Yep.
And Walter turns it down. So he said, when I look at the moment where he broke bad, that would be the moment. Because cooking meth and all of that, he could, in a way, justify it as I absolutely need to do it, or there's no way I would have the money to fund my treatment. But he no longer had that excuse.
Yep.
That was the choice. He was doing it because he liked it. And that's what he admits at the end of the show. Now, when you go
And like,
into a
here's the
show like
thing: like, the implication with that is that it's an open door. All he has to do is say, "Listen, I'm sorry. I was still reeling from the diagnosis, and I said some things I shouldn't have. Let's be friends again." And everyone hugs and kisses, and it's all like, like he still has to go through the cancer treatment, but it's better. You know what I mean? It was a recoverable situation. Like, at
I can
no.
understand you, but you're a little bit choppy.
Yeah, sorry about that. There's some. Let me check.
I
There we.
can understand what you're saying though.
Okay.
So, for people who couldn't understand Ben while he's fixing this, what he was saying was that it was when he turns down the treatment for the cancer, it's still a recoverable situation. At
Hmm.
some point, at least for a while, he could go up to them and say to them, "Hey, I apologize. I was in the heat of the moment. I was wrong." It would take a lot of humility to do it, even worse than it would be just to accept it in the first place, but it could be done.
Yep.
Now, obviously, eventually it becomes too long of a wait, and you're just going to give you the finger.
Yeah,
But
but that's different. Like, we're talking, like, before he did anything irredeemable. Like, there's always an out.
yeah, exactly. I mean, by the end of the story, that's the whole point. He admits it to them and whatever. But, whatever.
Hmm.
The the point of that is where I'm going with that in Gleipnir. I get the same impression of Gleipnir that you have a lot of people who are morally ambiguous and doing morally ambiguous things, but
Murdering
I
people
don't
for
see anybody
funsies.
trying to. Yeah, yeah, I don't see anybody trying to minimize them as not being immoral. Best I could get is the alien who's there just saying, I just want to see what people do, man. Kind of Shinigami ish,
Yep.
from Death Note. But he's not portrayed as a moral force here. Not by any means.
Right.
In fact, if anything, he's portrayed a little bit villainish. Like I
He's
said,
right, and he like through his actions, great evil is wrought. Um, like even though he's like, yeah, dude, I didn't do anything about it, but he's like, like it's the drug dealer thing. He didn't OD in front of me. I just sold him the drugs.
exactly. Uh, Because I'm thinking of he fulfills a function not exactly the same, but similar to Ryuk in Death Note. In that
Mm-hmm.
Ryuk, by dropping the Death Note and then watching events unfold, he didn't actually do anything. He was just watching it be done. The thing is that Death
Mm-hmm.
Note had a different philosophy. It's very debatable if Death Note's philosophy was superversive or not. I've seen differing opinions. I think that there could be a good discussion on that one day. But in the philosophy of Gleipnir, I don't see anybody trying to uh, excuse the actions of the characters. I don't see anybody trying to blend the line between good and bad in this show. No, when people do bad things, it's bad things that have been done.
Yep.
Whereas when you talk about Death Note, the question in Death Note becomes whether or not Light was doing anything bad at all because his methods happened to be working and crime was dropping and whatever.
Which is
And
like
that was the
the
question.
most basic question of all, like the most like lowest tier, small brained, like question you could ask. Was right really good all along? Like that's not a question a
Yeah,
truly moral society asks. That's a question a moral relative asks or a utilitarian asks. And by the way,
right.
like what you
That's
do
the
is you slap
question
them
Death Note
around,
poses.
and go like only by your own standard, only by your own standard, and you laugh at them because they only have their own standards. It may seem strange to laugh at utilitarians, but like then you just say, "Why aren't you taking me serious?" Because laughing at you gave me more measurable pleasure than to take you serious. Like it's like they're not even they're not even coherent at this point as a
Oh,
philosophy.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Uh, the point is, like, when you look at that's kind of the difference between the two shows. Death Note, and to be fair, I do think that the way that Death Note does it is at least more interesting than most. The fact
Sure.
that what Light does actually works, I think, is a very interesting point where they go,
Yeah.
because the impression is to go, Light's just a madman and he's, just murdering people, but Light can correctly point out, well, my original goal was to lower crime, protect the innocent, blah, 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 and it looks as if I've done all that. And it's
Right.
true. But I don't want to get into the morality of Death Note. The point is that that's a
Mm.
moral relativistic stance. The idea that might makes right, and there are all sorts of different issues with that. Gleipnir, I don't think, is even trying to pose that question.
Right.
I don't think that that was ever the point of the story. I
And I.
think that when people
Mhm.
do bad things in Gleipnir, then people are doing bad things.
Yep. Like
It's not
Sambe.
any more complicated than that.
Yep. Like Sambe is showing up not because he's some sort of like psycho. Yeah, let's fight. Let's do evil and stuff like that. There's other people like that, but he shows up because it's like, yeah, I made a wish to be like the strongest ever, and the alien like didn't quite say yes, but he gave me this super sweet body where I can fight people, like to my heart's content. Like it's that I'm not spoiling anything that you don't have available to you, even if you haven't watched it yet. And it's
No, and that's really funny.
And it's like, his motivation's simple, classic protagonist. I want to fight people to get stronger, which he does. Like he's testing out his new body and, fights Gleipnir. Um, like you take things like him, guys like him, and then you take, what their potential is with other shows, and it's honestly quite striking. He shows up and like once he's defeated, he just goes, "Oh, you got me. I guess I'm not as cool as all that." And he doesn't like betray him or anything like that. He's like, "Yep, you know, like I kind of do want to die in battle, but now's not quite the right time."
That's kind of funny.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm simplifying his character for comedic effect, but it's like, like compare that to like Goku like killing himself to do something, or various other characters basically, sacrificing themselves just to unlock the next final form of the villain. Um, it's a world of difference.
Oh yeah, yeah, Gleipnir. I would say Gleipnir is probably my second favorite show of the season to Brand New Animal, which is in unfortunately.
But you've
Brand
seen
New
it
Animal.
anyway.
Yes, yes, I have. I've sailed the seven seas. Uh, it's a good show. Recommended. It's a very good show, actually. I think it's the first great show of the year. Um, Brand New Animal, by the way. It Brand New Animal is a Trigger show. That's Trigger Beast. I mean, might as well just call it what it is. It's Trigger Beast. It's Trigger Beastars.
Yep. Which makes it totally sweet.
It is. It's sweet. There is one problem with it, though. That is actually kind of a big problem. Uh, I mentioned it before. So the problem with Beastars is the X-Men problem. So the X-Men problem is the really stupid problem that like 99% of the X-Men would manifestly have absolutely no problem fitting in real life. Like one of the characters in X-Men First Class, for example, Angel, she has wings on her back. So you go, oh man, she has to hide her wings all the time. But no, she doesn't. She's actually a stripper. So she
Right.
literally takes off all of her clothes. So apparently, she doesn't need to show anyone the wings ever, which just makes her a person with a superpower. And
Right. She
why?
just
Why is this
cleverly
a
angles the wings every time.
yeah? Like, why? Why is this a problem? Yeah, like what is upsetting about this? The same with Professor X. The wheel in X-Men First Class, he gets paralyzed from a gunshot. May take your opinion on whether or not you think that was a good idea. I like the movie. Whatever. Not the point. The point is his power. Like, what is the negative of having his power? From what I could see, there is none. Same with Magneto. Why would you not want to have Magneto's power? Why would you be persecuted for having it? I mean, like, what would even happen? I mean, I suppose if you were using it to do things like break the law, then yes, you would be persecuted. But if you were, say, to join a construction company and use it to move steel beams, I mean, are there really going to people who say burn the witch?
Right.
It seems kind of weird.
But it's like,
Beastars has the same problem
mm.
because in Beastars, the Beast people have the ability to look like humans. In fact, it is
Oh, you mean
told in the
BNA?
show. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Beastars does not have this problem. In fact, Beastars very much doesn't. Beastars is a very well constructed society, which is the reason it's probably a better show. Uh, Even though they're both good for different reasons, but with if I had to pick one of the two, I would pick Beastars for that reason. It's very well constructed. You're right, Brand New Animal. The problem with BNA is the X-Men problem, which is that the animals can look like humans whenever they want to. As a matter of
Mm-hmm.
fact, They choose to look like humans the majority of the time. Michiru, who is our main character and prefers to stay looking like an animal, is considered unusual for this. She is weird for staying like an animal all the time. And to be the show is that Michiru is stuck in her animal state, which is why she has to escape to Anima City
Mm-hmm.
and join the Beast people. And that is good. That's a good opening. That's a good idea. Okay, that I could see somebody, like there could be legitimate bias, prejudice, whatever you want to call it, people. If they're
Mm-hmm.
actually people who are animals, which is what we see with Meecher. The problem is, when you get to the city, you learn that they could turn into people. So they're people, right? That's what
Yeah.
that means. They're people who can turn into animals. What's the problem here? What's the issue? You're just a superhero now. Like
Mm-hmm.
why do we want to kill? Why do we want to kill these people? Like what did they do? What's the issue? It's just really strange. Michiru at one point even gets the ability to turn into a human again. Like 4 episodes in. Spoiler. Whatever. The reason I'm spoiling it is because it doesn't matter. And that's the problem. She regains the ability like 3 or 4 episodes in, and then decides that she's gonna stay in Anima City until they find a quote unquote cure for her Beastmen disease, because she was turned into a Beastman somehow. But you have the cure. Just don't turn into a Beastman. There's your cure. You've done it. You win.
Wild.
It's just I'm just like watching it going, I don't understand your logic. Like, I get the idea maybe that they're trying to sell that she's gotten attached to Anima City and to the Beastmen and whatever, but like she's always going on about how she wants a cure for it. She wants to become a human again. And that's why I'm like, but you can. You can become a human again.
Anytime you
Look,
want, in fact.
she does mention later it feels sort of like wearing heels. And we see another beast person when they go into the human world and they get excited. They kind of turn into a beast person. But even that, you have to be stuck in Anima City, living like in an orphan house or whatever, or in a halfway home because you don't want to wear heels.
Yes. Just the
It's
Chad,
just
yes.
I don't know. It's the one hole in the show, and I call it the X-Men problem because the X-Men have the exact same issue in that, like, at least half or more of the X-Men would have absolutely no problem fitting in with regular society and nobody would care about them.
Yep.
I mean, if Professor X is a danger for going into people's minds and whatever, I mean, I think the issue here is that he is going in and reading people's minds, and that's horribly invasive, and you are very right to be wary of him. But there's a
Yep.
solution, which is don't do that.
Like, right, he has
I mean,
control
like,
over his powers. He has explicit
exactly.
control over his powers.
Right, exactly. The same thing with Magneto. I mean, the problem, dude, is not that you can move metal. Like, I guess that they're gonna pretend that's the problem in the universe, but it makes no sense. I mean, if I knew a guy who can move metal with his mind, I would go, dude, that's sick.
Right.
Yeah, like what would you do? That would be your reaction, right?
Right.
The
Like,
problem becomes when you use that power to friggin' kill people. And then, yes, you're right. We will persecute you for the murder.
right. It's like, but I hate the Nazis. Okay, so does everyone. What's your point? Like, it's
And then, of
like,
course,
yeah.
the ultimate reveal in Logan that Magneto was actually right all along and they should have just murdered all the humans. Because the humans not only kill all of the mutants, they also form a dystopic wasteland. so they fail in literally every aspect.
Right.
They don't create a better society, and they kill all the mutants. So Magneto was right all along, and mutants should have ruled from the beginning.
If only they didn't listen to those magical, wise mutants. Like the one who goes around screaming that he's the Juggernaut, bitch. I'm sure that guy had tons of wisdom to share about being a juggernaut in the workplace.
That's my other issue with these stories. X-Men is a good example of it, but I have this issue in a lot of, unfortunately, Japanese stories. Actually, this was the issue that I called Bargain Bin Miyazaki, but it makes its way into America too. Which is that the mutants are clearly human, right? They're
Right.
just human. They're humans with superpowers. Who are we kidding? What reason do we have to believe that they would do anything differently than any regular human on the planet? None.
Right.
We have no reason. And see the same problem with Japanese media a lot with like, and to be fair to like Ferngully and friggin' Pocahontas, the noble savage idea, like these talking animals, and humans are evil, superior to people, and whatever. And I'm like, but they're just humans. They're humans who are, who happen to look like animals. They act like humans. They talk like humans. Their morals are clearly the same as humans. Like, why am I to assume that they would do anything differently than any other human being?
Right. So it's like, what am I supposed to do as a human? Like, am I supposed to like just burn the rainforest down for no other reason than that I can? Like, it's like Miyazaki, discount Miyazaki without the actual like Miyazaki nuance is worse than the useless, honestly. Uh,
Oh yeah, that's why Princess Mononoke is the only movie of that type to be. And the Mononoke movie is a subgenre of movie, right? It's where
mhm.
an outsider comes into a situation of conflict between two sides and is forced to mediate. One side civilized and one side savage, or comparatively so, or perceived to be so. Of those types of movies, there has been exactly one good one, and it was Princess Mononoke. This is because the idea is incredibly fraught with really, really easy to fall into pitfalls.
Right.
That Avatar did this story, Pocahontas did this story, Ferngully did this story,
Cause
Dances
they're
with Wolves.
savages, savages.
Yeah,
Actually, the part where they're both
uh,
singing the same song was pretty smart. I like that part.
that was pretty good, but it was a garbage movie. I'm not gonna lie, it had some good music. It did have good music, I'll give it that, but it was a garbage. Uh, Dances with Wolves is also not a bad film, but very slow and not nearly as smart as it thinks it is,
Right.
or
Like
profound as it thinks it is.
like
It's
it's
not a, it's fine.
yeah. There's nothing really special or bad about it. But the problem with uh Avatar or Dances with Wolves in Space is that they how do I
Avatar's awful.
yeah, it's
One of the
awful.
worst movies I've ever seen in my life.
But like it doesn't stand up to logic or reason. Like there's a whole bunch of different things that it could be and that it could do that it does not. Part of it is dealing with why are they so superior? Like if you have a mystical Native American tribe, like one with the land, etc., there are ways to make it work. Plenty of ways to make it work.
Oh yeah.
But the thing is, you know, that works only because everyone's on the same technological level. If you're not on this or no, similar enough, if you're like literally flying around space in spaceships, and it's some space elves who are standing in your way, and they don't have spaceships, heck, they don't even have the culture at the same tier as your average Native American, like they just don't. Um,
Right.
like it's harder to breed sympathy to for them that is anything more than um, just kind of you know terrible terrible personal philosophy. Like it's genuinely nothing other than whatever you want it to be. And of course, whatever you want it to be is your personal politics.
Exactly. The reason that Princess Mononoke is literally the only story to turn this into a great movie, which is one of several reasons I consider it one of the best movies ever made, because of the ambition of what it set out to succeed and successfully succeeded in doing. Uh, the reason that Princess Mononoke works is because Princess Mononoke is in a world where you can't really mark out any side as the good side.
Right.
Uh, the forest creatures of Princess Mononoke are no white hats. I would say that Lady Eboshi and the humans are definitely more villainous in this scenario. Uh, but with that said, there's also the idea that there really is no path forward for them. The real villains of the story are the samurai who are coming from the Emperor, and Lady Eboshi is trying to maneuver her way around them. And the
Yep.
forest creatures aren't willing to make any sort of compromise. San immediately tries to kill her. Never arrange any sort of they never arrange any talk. And in fact, this is the specific problem of the wolves. All of them have their own fatal flaws, and the fatal flaw of the wolves is that they're fatalistic. They've
Well, the
already
boars.
acted that. Well, the fatal flaw of the boars is that it is the opposite end, is that they refuse to accept that what they're doing is not. And the scene where the head of the boars turns into a demon is one of the most heart wrenching scenes in the film. It's
Yep.
actually a really really sad scene.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
it really is. It's really really sad. When they trick the boar into thinking that the people who all were slaughtered were actually still alive,
Oh
and
yeah.
then they go to murder him, and he turns into a demon. Uh, such a sad scene. But besides, the point is, yeah, the fatal flaw of the boars was that they refused to consider any possibilities. They were just gonna fight, and even though they were gonna lose, they were gonna fight. And when the wolves warned them that they were not gonna win the fight, they didn't care. They were gonna do it anyway, and they all
Mm-hmm.
get slaughtered. The
Yep.
wolves don't fight. They don't do anything. The wolves just accept, we're doomed. That's it. There's nothing to be done. And the only wish of the mother wolf is revenge on Lady Eboshi, which she kind of gets.
Yep.
Eboshi's. Uh, San, though, represents the mistake of the wolves was that San represented a very unique opportunity that, because of their hatred of humans, they didn't even try to utilize. San is a human who lived among the wolves. This makes her a perfect spokesperson. Lady
Mm-hmm.
Eboshi is shown at the end of the movie to agree with Ashitaka and to be willing to work with the creatures. This tells us something. She is open to negotiation. She is somebody who would be willing to negotiate if you could convince her that what was done was in her best interests.
Yep.
But they never tried. And they never tried despite having a perfect opportunity to do so right in front of
Yep.
them. Because Lady Eboshi does have a point herself. The whole thing with Princess Mononoke, you get the idea. The idea is that the it is because this story is subtle, clever, and told with depth and nuance. Pocahontas and Avatar, God, especially Avatar, that is seriously, when I saw that Unobtainium actually made it into the script, my jaw, like, it's not even trying.
Right.
Not even trying. Unobtainium. You couldn't come up with anything. That's what you went with. I don't know.
Yep.
Uh,
And it's like I said
whatever.
before, like there's also the qualities of of it. Like Miyazaki makes it very clear that the qualities of the forest are, its beauty, its natural wonders, its resources, and its godlike animals. But then it's like for Avatar, what's its use? Well, it's got this mind thing that brainwashes soldiers. Ah. It's hiding on something humanity desperately needs to not die on their miserable planet. Ah. Are they doing anything with it? No. Will they? Never.
It's in yeah, the other thing in Princess Mononoke, the English translation when Ashitaka shows up is that he needs to see with eyes unclouded by. That's the phrase that keeps coming up. But if you watch the when you watch the sub, when and by the way, the dub of Princess Mononoke is excellent, and I actually really like it. So yeah, just throwing that out there. But anyway, if you watch the subtitles of Princess Mononoke, while the line "to see with eyes unclouded by hate" does come up, when he first meets with Lady Eboshi and she asks why he's there, what Ashitaka actually says is to see with eyes unclouded. He doesn't say unclouded by hate, and I think that's intentional. This is because Lady Eboshi is herself deceiving the townspeople, but she's deceiving them in a very subtle way, in a way that it's almost, she could probably argue with a kind of snake-like slipperiness that she's not really deceiving anybody, especially not the women, who are the ones who are the most loyal to her, though the men are loyal to her as well. The whole idea of that early part of the movie when Ashitaka is exploring the town and working there is that there's supposed to be a sense of wrongness about Iron Town. That everything seems good on the surface, but something is not quite right about it. The women are doing the work and the men are in the background, and people often look at Princess Mononoke for that reason as a feminist movie, but I would disagree with that. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's part of Ashitaka going in and seeing with eyes unclouded. This idea that the fact that everything has been flipped so topsy-turvy in Irontown is a part of that wrongness, and we see this manifest later on. Tells the women, remember, you can't trust men after she sends the men away. The irony of that statement is, of course, that she is literally lying to the men at that very moment,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that a lot of commentators who it for or praise whichever side you're on for feminist messaging, I believe miss. And I think the whole thing, Ashitaka is observing the city. And when he talks to Lady Eboshi, you kind of get the sense when they're speaking that Lady Eboshi realizes that she's talking to an equal who she can speak freely, which is why Ashitaka tells her straight out, if I thought I could kill you and it would get rid of my curse, I would do. And Lady Eboshi tells him straight out, yeah, that's right, it was me. You get the
Mm-hmm.
sense that she wouldn't do this for just anybody, but she recognizes in Ashitaka somebody who's not going to fall for the usual shit.
Yep.
Yeah,
Like the priest is in
he's
a similar way with that too.
in this town
He,
and the wrong. Go ahead.
what was that?
I can hear you properly.
Well, the priest is in a similar way. Even though he's like super greedy for like the power and immortality the head can of the god can offer him, he's not really impressed by anything, like, or at least he pretends to be impressed by what
You're
Lady
glitching
Eboshi's.
on me.
So you remember the priest, Anthony?
The
Yeah, the
No, what movie?
Mononoke.
Princess Mononoke. I don't remember a priest in Mononoke.
The guy who
What am I
ran off
forgetting?
the guy who ran off with the head at the end, and they had to chase him to get it back.
Oh, oh yeah. He represented kind of every man for himself mentality. C.S. Lewis, the dwarf
Yep.
thing,
But also he
and hilariously, he makes it out alive at the end. and just kind of scam.
Yeah. But he also was in a similar vein as Ashitaka. He was not deceived by Lady Eboshi. Pretty much at all. At least I don't remember him ever being deceived by her.
No, that's why he thought of Ashitaka and was little like, yeah, you and I, we could get along. And Ashitaka's kind of eyeing him sideways and going, I think you're, he doesn't say this outright, but the implication is, I think you're misjudging our relationship. Yeah.
Right.
I think you have the wrong idea of if you think that we are going to be on the same side.
Right.
Yeah. And Ashitaka is, he's correct, and he ends up weirdly being the final boss at the end of the movie, kind
Yep.
of all people. Oh, I can't remember his name, but he was played by Billy Bob Thornton in the dub. When one of the few bad casting choices, because it really did not fit.
Really?
I
I'll have to
I didn't
re-listen
think.
to him.
I liked Minnie Driver. I liked Minnie Driver as Lady Eboshi a lot. Princess Mononoke is a very, very quotable movie. So
Oh
many
yeah.
good lines in it.
And like it had
Um,
what's her
but
name? Scully
I
from the
like
X
Minnie
Files.
Driver. What the?
So the
I don't
Lady
know.
Wolf is was Scully from the X Files.
Oh, really? I had
Yep.
no idea.
Like they actually got like some high
Billy
class.
Crudup was. They did. I think some of the Ghibli dubs suffer a little bit from celebrity voiceitis. In that they cast someone because they were a celebrity and it wasn't necessarily Princess Mononoke, however, was not
Christian Bale as Howl,
Princess
though
Mononoke.
he did pretty well mostly.
Yeah, in Howl's Moving Castle, uh, he did fine. According to, I always thought he was a little bit unemotional, but according to my sister, he was pretty true to the book. I'll give him a pass.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm really thinking of was Arrietty, Secret World of Arrietty, and Ponyo. I thought Betty White stood out way too much.
I don't remember. I don't remember Arrietty well enough for it, though. I remember liking it.
I watched Arrietty once. I found it quite boring. Was not a fan.
Hmm.
Uh, it's a very slow movie, not as good as Miyazaki's typical films. Of course, he did not direct. He only wrote the script. I could
Right.
see why he wrote the scene in the movie by far. The best scene of the movie by far is when they need to like traverse the kitchen and they have like mountain climbing gear, and for those who don't know, the Secret World of Arrietty is an adaptation of the book The Borrowers, which is little tiny people living in a. They have you know, two of the characters, Arrietty and her father, need to get through the kitchen. They have to prepare like climbing gear, and navigate their way through the kitchen like it's full of all of these natural obstacles. And I think by that would appeal to Miyazaki and his whole like whimsy and everyday life aesthetic. But
Yep.
at the same time, that was by far the best scene in the film, and I thought most of it was pretty boring, which is
So
a shame, really.
yep. So we've been going for quite some time, but this is sort of like a perfect example of what we're talking about when it comes to analysis. Like we are analyzing in close detail, the various bits and bobs and details of the movies we're interested in. Like it's like there's purpose behind everything that's done in an animated movie and in most movies in general. Therefore, everything can have meaning or metaphors or historical references to ancient Japanese myths. You know what I mean? And it's always worthwhile to pick out these informations and these little bits and interactions, like with Ashitaka and Lady Eboshi, um, just so that you can see better what sort of things the Japanese might take for granted. or what the director took for granted.
Oh yes, yeah. First off, I'm gonna give you an A on the segue.
Anthony,
Excellent segue work.
Anthony, come on, it's me you're talking to. It's me.
Excellent segue work. But yeah, you we were getting into analysis, which was something that we brought up at the beginning of the stream, and the reason that I brought it up was because I've been watching the analyst Digibro, and I believe that Digibro is probably, of all the ones that I've watched, and I watched quite a few of, at least of the AniTubers, he is the second best analyst I have seen. The best review series I have ever seen is, no surprise to anyone, the Plinkett Star Wars review. Uh, they were masterfully written. They were in a way that was interesting. I didn't appreciate Plinkett's style originally, but after analysis video, the importance of having a style,
Mm-hmm.
make sure that people were interested in it. He also put in a lot of analysis in a relatively short period of time. And I know it doesn't appear short, but when you watch other content creators like Mark, you realize how much information content he packed in there. So
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely say that's the best series I've watched on anything. And maybe my favorite reviewer overall, maybe not, is ER, who is a right-wing edgelord who I think was accused by maybe the Rolling Stone or Forbes or something of being a Nazi, and then this boosted his numbers after like PewDiePie backed him, uh, which is hilarious, by the way. And what makes ER hilarious is that ER literally doesn't give a shit. Like he just doesn't care. He does not care, and he's the best. He also has the best Last Jedi review on YouTube.
Yeah.
And in the anime community, the Anitubers, I've mentioned many times, and it's still true. My favorite anime analyst is Alexander, who has the most insightful analyses of media and anime that I have ever seen, and who is also the sort of content creator that I strive to be one day, because he does exactly what I think needs to be done, which is he talks about why works that everybody likes are awesome instead of spending time bashing bad things. And while
Mm-hmm.
that can be fun, I did mention ER's Last Jedi review and the famous Plinkett prequel reviews. While that can be fun, we need more work just telling, explaining, figuring out why the stuff we like is good.
Yep.
And that's very, very important to figure out. Arguably more important if you're a writer, especially, than figuring out why stuff that's bad is bad. Is arguably more important. Arguably, but
There,
I would argue, yeah,
there's always
it's
going to be
more
more
important to figure
bad
out.
and mediocre things than good things. Period. Like at
Right.
at no point will good things be more than bad things. Like even in ancient Greece with all the plays and stuff like that. Like we only care about Euripides because that's the only one anyone cared to save, except for a couple of others, here and there. You know what I mean?
Oh, exactly. You're absolutely right. That's that's why I really, really like Alexander, because he has a whole series. First off, his favorite shows are not always mine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not because I agree with him all of the time. His favorite shows are Steins Gate, Hunter x Hunter, ReZero. I like Hunter x Hunter, and I think that it can be brilliant at times, but it is certainly not my favorite. And I think that Steins Gate is good, but not great. And I think he said his favorite show. However, he is also a Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood fan, which is my favorite show. And one example of why I really like Alexander. Uh, he did a video on the villain of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, Father. Right? For
Mm-hmm.
those who don't know the show, the villain of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Uh, I mean, it's convoluted to explain, I guess, but the idea is that he's an artificially created being who separated his desires into 7 different sub-creations of his based on the 7 deadly sins, and he's trying to come up with a way to embody like the spirit of God. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a very without knowing the nuances of the show, it's hard to explain, but that's about as well as you could get it. Father is often criticized, at least somewhat, as a villain for not being as charismatic as some of the minor villains, which is absolutely true. If you want to talk about the most interesting villains in the show, there are plenty to pick from. There's Envy is a great villain. King Bradley, who's the personification of wrath, is a great villain. Uh, there was one other that I had in mind,
Kimberly.
and I can't think of. Kimberly, yes, he is a fantastic villain. All of those are good picks for your favorite. Most people would pick either Bradley or Envy. That I think if they talk about their favorite villain, it's generally split between those two, which is perfectly fair. And Father is often looked at as like, you know, he's fine, he works.
Mm-hmm.
Alexander did a video acknowledging this, saying, I understand why people are underwhelmed by Father. I don't even necessarily think that's wrong. But then the video was actually about here is why I think Father had to be the villain of the story, and how philosophically he was 100% the villain that they needed to have. And that was what his video was about, justifying Father in the narrative, essentially.
Yep.
Uh,
Which is always
explaining how his
important to do.
philosophy, yes, explaining how his philosophy contrasted with the Elric brothers, how his plan, why his plan was important, all of that sort of stuff. Basically going, so you could argue if you want to that he's not the most charismatic villain, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree. But what I would argue is that from a philosophical perspective and a thematic perspective, he was the villain that the series had to have. See, that sort of analysis, that is the stuff that I like to see. The
Mm-hmm.
reason I like to see that is because a video where they talk about why Father is not a good villain is not very interesting, to be honest, because
Yep.
I know why he's not. The reason he's not considered as great of a villain is because Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood has some of the best characters in all of anime, all of manga, really. You know, and some of its minor villains are incredibly memorable and fun. When you think of the villains of Full Metal Alchemist, you think of Lust, Envy, you know, King Bradley, Kimberly. You don't think of Father, really. He's an afterthought.
Right.
That's why. That's the answer. He's not charismatic. He's not as interesting of a personality. A video on that isn't really needed. It would be a waste of time. But a video on why he works in the story, now that's something I'm interested in hearing. And the
Yep.
reason I'm interested in hearing it is because I want to see somebody do something new, if that makes sense. And I want to see someone go, oh, you think it works. You think this makes the story good. You think it is a good thing it is there. Why?
Yep.
How are you going to justify that to me? He has a similar thing in his Gurren Lagann videos. In his Gurren Lagann videos, in one of the videos, he justifies the ending of Gurren Lagann. The argument essentially being that the ending of, when I'm going to spoil the heck out of Gurren Lagann, but it's like over a decade old now, so it's your own fault. Anyway, when Nia disappears at the end of Gurren Lagann at their wedding. So for people who haven't seen it, they go across the time and space, across the galaxy, many galaxies to rescue his one true love, the space princess Nia. And he finally rescues her. They go back to Earth to get married, and after they get married, Nia fades away. And the reveal is that because Nia's life was connected to the life of the villain, when the villain dies, Nia dies. That's an oversimplification, I think, but it works well enough. That's
Mm-hmm.
the essence of it. That's the essence of it. So when they ask Simon about this, he says, "No, no, it's okay. We've accepted this. Our time is over." You know, Nia wanted this. She's okay with it. I am okay with it. And now Gurren Lagann is up to you guys. John C. Wright wrote a stellar, by the way, and you should look it up on his website. A stellar review of Gurren Lagann, but he gave the end. But he absolutely bashed this ending. I am going off of memory here, and I could try and pull it up in the background right now. But I believe his argument over the ending of Gurren Lagann was that it went against the core philosophy of the series. See, the philosophy of Gurren Lagann was that there's nothing, don't tell me what to do is the phrase that keeps getting repeated throughout the show. You know, n-
Mm-hmm.
so the idea is that in Gurren Lagann, you can do whatever you put your mind to and nobody can stop you. It's about the boundless potential of humanity, right?
Right.
Nobody can tell humanity what they can't do. That's all the way up to the final villain. When the final villain says you have a they tell him that they're not going to let them, the anti-spirals are the villain and they're trying to stop all movement so they could halt entropy. And, the humans come in and say, we refuse to be, imprisoned by you. And they say, you can't overcome the limitations of entropy. And Simone says, by the way, this is the greatest final battle in all of anime. But Simone, who is our main character, like yells something like, "That's your limitation." And when the battle is over, and they win. Spoiler again. Humanity doesn't go extinct. Gasp! It's
Right.
not Evangelion.
Right.
Anyway,
We're not all
I
mind
just spoiled
melding with the
Evangelion too.
weakest character in the series.
Yeah, I just spoiled Evangelion too. Whoopsie. Don't worry, I just helped you. You're all better off for it. Whatever.
It's
Anyway,
older than some of the people who are
yeah,
alive.
really.
Like
It might be older than me for all. I actually, when did it even come
1996.
out? No, I was two at the time.
Okay.
There you go. Not quite older than me, but whatever. The point I'm making here is the anti-spirals have a line, Simone, where they said if this has to be how it is, protect the universe. And Simone's response to it is, of course we will, because humanity isn't that stupid.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about, fuck yeah, humans. Whoops, cursing. Don't play this to your kids, guys.
Don't worry, I put it down as not made for
All right.
kids. And I'm not getting monetized anyway. Like I'm never gonna get monetized. I do this
Yeah.
for free.
Well, we were talking about Gleipnir, so okay. I do want to increase. I do want to one day increase the reach of the channel, and I'm going to try to do that through Castalia House. But with that said, I literally could not care less about making money off of. This is not where this was never in any way making videos and doing reviews was never a money making venture. I do it because I am super nerdy and I find this fun.
He does it
Other
because he
people
cares.
find it exactly. Other people find this mind numbing and boring, and I think it is fun to sit down and do an in depth analysis of a space robot show because it is fun, and if you don't think so, you're wrong,
Right.
objectively.
Like it's the eternal argument. How esoteric can a mecha show get? Turns out,
The
pretty
answer is
esoteric.
Evangelion. The answer is
well,
Evangelion. And I guess Ray Hexapon too.
like there's the thing where it's like Gundam is a mecha show, small brain. Kill a Kill is a mecha show, bigger brain. Uh, what was the other one? I can't remember it.
How about
Uh,
just Gleipnir?
yeah, Gleipnir is a mecha show, and that's an even bigger brain. Then the Galaxy brain is magical girl shows are mech shows.
Oh, that's just looping back around to kill a kill.
No, 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 no. Kill a Kill's different. You actually put things on. It's a mech show, except clothing are the mechs. With Magical Girls, it's an entire transformation sequence. There's no like creator. There's just this magical wish-giving cat that may be villainous. There seems to be a lot of skulls whenever you enter its domain. Like is this an 8-year-old girl skull? Is there something you should be telling me, Cube? Make a contract. I don't think I will, Cube. Not until you explain all these gosh dang skulls. Anyway, like one of the first things I'm teaching my kids when I have them is how not to accept deals. So, like, one time at work, this guy's like, I need to pay for this with a check. Well, guess what? You can't really do that. And he's like, yeah, you want to bet? I'm like, sir, I've read too many fairy tales to take a bet like that. And he's like, that's fair, because he was an older gentleman and he knew exactly what I was talking about. And it turns out, yes, he was part of some like special like friend of work program that allowed him to use checks
Okay,
for
that's pretty funny.
right. Like it's like like you want to bet? No. Remember, be polite. Like be professional. And what's the last one? Like don't engage in any deals with strange people you've just met. What do you want to bet? Oh, just something precious to you, like money? Sure. And then all of a sudden you've lost like the
Okay,
ability to sing.
okay, but the worst and simultaneously best ever is Darby the Gambler and Polnareff. That whole scene is just amazing because right before it, have this thing. If we see anything even slightly suspicious, then we will not hesitate to react immediately. And then
Right,
there's just this guy who's like, I could give you information, but let's make a bet first, which first off is already weird. But then
right.
they're just like, yeah, okay, sure, why
Sure
not?
thing.
And then they go, and then he goes to Polnareff like, what should I bet though? I don't have anything to bet. And he goes, oh, all right, Polnareff, just bet your soul. And Polnareff's reaction to this is, yeah, all right, sure, why not? Let's just do it. And nobody reacts to this. Everybody, like, a random dude is going to give you information about the exact thing that you are searching for and
Right.
has just asked for your soul in a bet. And your reaction to this is,
Sure.
weird
Let's
old,
do it.
what a weird guy. Anyway,
Haha.
bet your soul on the cat, Polnareff. Hope he picks the right jerky.
so
Yeah.
so what's funny is like Polnareff was proud of being a Frenchman. He has surely read the fairy tales and whatnot, and it's like meaningless to him. It's pearls before swine, but that's kind of Polnareff's lot in life. Um,
Poor Polnareff.
I know he's.
And now I like to think he's still a turtle to this day.
Oh yeah, no, he's stuck in that turtle forever. So through the magic of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Polnareff's soul got stuck in Eternal because of an arrow. Uh, that was technically his own ability, but not his own ability. Uh, it's a pretty wild series of events that's like the climax of the entire show. But
I think you're going into too much detail. You just got to go with this. Polnareff's a turtle now.
yeah,
He died
Polnareff's the
and his
turtle.
soul got stuck in a turtle.
Yep.
And now he's a turtle. And then at the end, I like to think that at the end of it, when he goes to like journal, yeah, maybe I'll stay here and like advise you. I mean, that's really stupid, right? I like to think he's just stuck in the turtle and he's trying to salvage some dignity. You
Right.
know, Polnareff,
Like
you're still
Giorno
here,
can grow him a new
turtle.
body. Like just
Just
putting it out there.
Polnareff, you're still here, Polnareff. Are you really? Goes, oh, yeah, yeah. I decided. You know what? Would probably would work if I was a turtle. Be a great advisor if you had me as a turtle. And then
Like
there's just Polnareff going, damn it, I can't get out. And he's like, should I ask him for a new body? And then he said, no, they don't know. They don't know. I'm just stuck here. Now I gotta commit to the bit.
And what's funny is that Jarno almost certainly knows, and he's like, if Polnareff doesn't ask, I can't help him. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not
So,
just gonna
no,
give him.
I like the idea. He knows that he's stuck, but he's just like, I'll help him if he asks me, but if he's not gonna ask me, then, right?
Right.
So, like, if I'm just gonna assume he likes it that way. And meanwhile, Polnareff is just like, I can't ask him. I look like such a moron.
Except
I'm a
Jarno's a man
turtle
of
now.
infinite patience, and Polnareff is not.
And now Polnareff is just like, I guess that's my lot now. I'm a turtle till. And then
Ah,
you look
c'est
up
la
how long
vie.
tortoise, technically. And then you look up how long tortoises live, and you go, Jesus Christ, I'm a tortoise for like 80 more years.
And the tortoise name is Coco
Like I'm
is
gonna
Mr.
outlive,
President. Like
I'm gonna
it's a,
outlive Giorno. And then Polnareff just becomes like the advisor of kings, the
right.
immortal advisor of kings in the mob. The Polnareff turtle. It becomes a thing in the mob that every leader of the mob, and he's like the Polnareff's like the kingmaker turtle.
Now I promise we wouldn't talk about Stone Ocean, but like Poochie reset the universe. Do you think he's still in the turtle?
Uh, I like to think so, but I doubt it. On the other
It's
hand, it's more likely he's just dead.
it's true. What's
But
up
I
with
like
this?
to think
Yeah.
maybe Polnareff does like it. Maybe it's not. Maybe he prefers to be a turtle. Maybe Giorno offered it to him. He said, "Hey, Polnareff, I could grow you a body if you want." And then Polnareff's like, "No, you know what? I looked up tortoises, and it turns out they live for like 100 years. I'd only have like 40 left in that body.
Honestly, less
Screw
with the
that shit."
damage that he's had.
Exactly. It's like 40 at most. More
Right.
likely, like a decade. He goes, but in this body, nobody's gonna try and kill me because I'm a friggin' tortoise.
Right.
Yeah.
And he
If
still has
if
his
somebody come,
abilities and stuff like that, so it's like, you know, eh?
somebody goes up to him, he just goes, "Oh shit, I'm a tortoise now," and then he just acts like a tortoise.
Her.
Yeah.
Then he stabs somebody who messes with him. Just like all of a sudden it's like, ah, that tortoise stabbed somebody. It's like, you fools. Don't you know who I am? And he like
Honestly,
reaches out of the tortoise. Menacing vibrations fill the air.
honestly, I just really now I'm really tickled at the idea of Polnareff as like the kingmaker in the mob.
Right.
You have to be accepted by the tortoise, and
You have to.
everybody just thinks you're insane, and then he starts talking to you.
Right.
Yeah, he has this great, he's this respected figure in the mob, this respected, mysterious figure. You see him in pictures over generations of mob bosses. They all have a tortoise next to them. Nobody knows what it means, and
So
and
there's
it's
a.
just called. He's the real cower behind the mafia.
Right. It's like so. There's
Honestly,
I can't resist. There's the classic meme where it's like this must be the work of an enemy stand. Be careful, guys. The stand user could be anywhere and anyone. And then like the
oh,
stand user's in a striped suit, riding a striped unicycle, juggling heads. Like it's fairly ridiculous. Like the level of disbelief Araki
amazement.
asks us to pull off, but it's like he does it. He gets it to work.
I mean, the reason he gets it to work is because he's so upfront about it.
Yeah. So like because the
It
guy's in the unicycle, it works.
I think it's more like if JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, you've mentioned this to me in the past, and you're absolutely correct. If JoJo's Bizarre Adventure ever held back at all, it would immediately drop to pieces.
Yep.
Like it, if JoJo's Bizarre Adventure ever said, I'm not going to include this because, or I'm going to try and justify this because otherwise it would be too ridiculous, or, I'm not going to go all the way here because it might be a little bit too absurd, then the
Yep.
whole thing collapses like a house of cards because now you're forced to try and apply logic to it at certain points.
Yep.
And as soon as you try and apply logic to it, it falls apart
Yep.
because JoJo's works on a sort of stream of consciousness anti-logic.
But the thing is that it has its own eternal logic. Like, I wouldn't even call it anti-logic, just for the simple fact that all characters act according to their natures or desires, like without
Well,
fail.
yeah,
Like
yes, I will give you that.
the reason why we keep coming back to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is because it is the best of the things that we're talking about, without any irony or deceitfulness or anything like that. Like,
Well, I'll tell you why. There are certain stories that if you asked me if I would rank them among my top stories ever, I would answer no. JoJo's is one, My Hero Academia is another, but I talk about them all the time. And the reason that I talk about them all the time is because there is so much going on in them.
hmm
Like My Hero Academia as well. I know that people have this idea, and correctly, by the way, but that's more to discuss later, that My Hero Academia is a very standard, simple shonen story, and, it follows all of those tropes and conventions, and you would be right. But on the other hand, shonen stories cover huge ground. They are almost always the most ambitious stories in the medium. There
yep.
are exceptions, but there aren't a lot of exceptions.
Well, there
There
are
are very
exceptions,
few
but they're
exceptions.
usually like inscrutable. Like, Blame is an exception. It was made in 1996, and it's about a dude walking through an immense building the size of a solar system, searching for the last non-mutated human, which turns out to be in two robots, girl robots.
That
It's
sounds
weird.
amazing, and now I want to watch it.
Read it, but no,
Read it.
it's
I want to read it now.
there's a Netflix movie that's okay. Like, he gets the basic feel down, but it's not the same as actually reading it, because he will spend entire chapters with nobody talking. Or, like, people will try to talk to the main character, but they kind of peter out because it gets super awkward because he will not respond to them. Like, a character dies on his back as he's trying to take him to safety, and he just kind of goes, "Oh, well, too late to turn back now." And he just delivers the dead body to his mother and walks off, like not even caring. Like, he's like, "Do you
There
have any?"
are,
He's like, "Do you have any food?" "Yeah, it's over there." "Okay, thank you."
yeah, I
He
gotta
doesn't
watch
even say
that. But
thank you, honestly, but
but there are other stories though that I would say have the ambition of a shonen. Legend of the Galactic Heroes. However, I would say that I've never that shonen. How about this?
it precedes
The
shonen, by the way.
wrestling show. What?
So, like, I view Legend of the Galactic Heroes in this sense like pre-shonen. You had Shonen Jump, but it wasn't the same as the modern shonen comic. Like, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure started
No,
out
but
as a
Legend.
shonen.
I would consider that. Did it really?
Yeah,
Seriously?
yeah,
I did not know that. I
it
thought that
started
was
off in
just all
Shonen
series.
Jump, and it left Shonen Jump to Monthly Jump or whatever, or Shueisha Jump or whatever it's called.
Oh, it left. Okay.
Yep,
But that is notable. It started off as a shonen.
yep,
That's interesting. That's very interesting. But there's the point. For whatever reason, and I've done whole articles on this, and there are lots of theories, and I'm sure that there's a good explanation out there. But shonen are almost always the most densely packed, the broadest scale stories on the market. They have
hmm
they're the most ambitious as well because It is shonen that juggle huge casts of characters. It is shonen that juggle their own unique magic systems and individual richly created fantasy worlds. And I'm talking even the bog standard, not very good shonen like Fairy Tail. I would
Or
actually give Fairy Tail, which is terrible, by the way. It's a terrible show, terrible manga. But I would actually give Fairy Tail. It is. It is, man.
I mean, it got
Uh,
terrible.
well, the point I'm making, though, I would even give Fairy Tail as an example of the one I don't like a lot of credit just for the simple fact that it is doing things. Like, and by doing things, I mean it created a world, it created these characters, it created a magic system. You know, Anohana, for example, which is a show, for those who don't know, about a girl who dies and she comes back years later as a ghost and their childhood friends reunite to try and figure out what's going on. Uh, Anohana was a good show and I enjoyed it. However, Anohana does not have the ambition of even like the average shonen adventure story.
Yep.
That's like even the fairy tales of the world, even the Naruto's of the world, you know, the ones that people think of as, oh, your standard shonen. Like, really think about what they're doing for a moment and how ambitious it is.
Oh yeah. Like
My
it's.
Hero Academia and JoJo's are, for me, I think of it a little like that. My Hero Academia happens to be an extremely good shonen. I think one of the best shonen, and I've argued somewhat with people over this who think it's too standard to be one of the best shonen. And while I understand that point of view, I think that Horikoshi, the creator of My Hero Academia, is an absolute master at creating unique characters and having them undergo really rich character development. I
Hmm.
don't know if there's anybody outside of what maybe Tagashi from Hunter x Hunter and Yu Yu Hakusho might be on his level.
Oda.
Yeah, I would say he was. He's at least on his level, but outside of Tagashi, who is admittedly one of the greatest, even though he's not my favorite personally, admittedly one of the greatest creators of all time. Credit where it's due. Outside of Tagashi, I don't know if there's anybody who is doing things as interesting or as well executed with their characters as Horikoshi is. The whole Endeavor Redemption arc was exceptionally well written in the
Hmm.
My Hero Academia manga. It had so much potential to go wrong, and it never hit a single false note the entire time. Everything felt true to the character, everything felt true to a proper redemption arc, and the fact that he managed to pull that off with somebody who was legitimately abusive is unbelievably impressive and kept him as a major character in the series.
Oh
Even
yeah.
characters who are normally more stock characters like Deku and Bakugo. Deku and Bakugo are very much archetypal shonen characters. The I want to be the very best hero and his hot-headed rival.
Hmm.
There is no shortage of these characters in anime and manga. And the reason there's no shortage of them is, of course, because they're very popular. But Deku and Bakugo are extremely well written and well executed versions of these characters. Now, is My Hero Academia one of the best or one of my favorite series? The answer to this question is actually no. I think that My Hero Academia does have a fair bit of flaws. Mostly by a fair bit of flaws, I mean that some of its arcs are kind of meh. I
Yeah.
don't think that they're particularly entertaining. Some of them, with that said, some of them are absolutely fantastic, which is why My Hero Academia is worth talking about. The current arc, I think it's called the War arc, in My Hero Academia, is literally the best that the manga has ever been, which is incredibly impressive this many
Oh
years
yeah.
into the story. He's, if anything, gotten better as time has gone on, when it's normally the opposite.
Yep.
And this current arc of the manga is absolutely unbelievable. Uh, some of the fight scenes ended up being some of the most iconic moments in anime history. The United
Yep.
States of Smash in almost immediately like turned into probably a top 10 fight in the history of anime. But outside of all of that, there are things about the story I don't like. Mineta, but nobody likes Mineta.
Nobody likes him.
True story. When I saw the movie and Mineta showed up on screen, the first movie, literally the entire theater groaned. I'm
That's
pretty
funny,
sure we were all hoping he wouldn't. We were all hoping he wouldn't be in the movie.
right?
Like, and when he showed up, everybody just went, ah. He also places last in all of the character polls, so he's not popular in either Japan or America, which is like really fun.
Right. I think he does
Uh,
have a narrative purpose of being the hate sink. Like it would
the
it would
problem is he's not the hate sink of the other characters. The
so
only time I
the
ever
other
remember
characters don't
somebody
have to be
really,
what we think. Like if they were what we think, it would just be like wish fulfillment, and wish fulfillment is never a good idea to do anything.
yeah, that's Uh, well, there was the one scene that was actually amazing when, in the Bakugo kidnapping arc early on, when Mineta is going to like to peep on the girls in the other bath or whatever, and that's one of those God, I hate Mineta scenes because that wasn't funny. That was gross, and I felt kind of ill looking at it. And then Koda, who is the kid Deku rescues later in the arc, like kicks Mineta in the balls or something, or I think no, he pokes him in the eye because it was through like a hole in the fence, and they asked him to keep watch. He pokes
Hmm.
Mineta in the eye and like kicks him off the wall, and then he says something along the lines of, "You call yourself a hero and you act like this. You need to, you're basically scum. Get yourself in order." Yes, finally, someone said it. Like nobody said this to Mineta. That's
Right.
I think the
His
only
parents
time in the
didn't beat him
entire
enough.
series. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the only time in the entire series anybody tells Mineta stop being a scumbag. And it's a little disappointing. Like somebody, anybody, just say it. Oh,
Please, we want to be free.
but My Hero Academia always has something worth talking about. JoJo's is the same way. JoJo's is not my favorite series. I wouldn't consider it in the top of shows or manga that I have read. However, I would consider it incredibly dense. I would consider it to be attempting tons of very ambitious things. I would say that at its best, it is as good or better than anything else that I've read or seen. Much like I would with My Hero Academia, if anything, while I think My Hero Academia may be arguably a little more consistent, JoJo's higher.
Yep.
Uh, I do think so. They're not my favorite shows, but they're always worth talking about.
Oh yeah.
Now, Hunter x Hunter is another one. Hunter x Hunter, I think if you were to ask somebody what the greatest shonen of all time is, you'll tend to be split between two answers as a consensus. Obviously, you'll get, shonen adventure stories, I guess I should say. You will tend to get a split between Hunter x Hunter 2011 and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Obviously, not every single person will say those two, but I imagine if there was a poll, they would be one and two in whatever order you'd care to put them.
You see, to me, I wouldn't like, but like I also have non-mainstream tastes. Like, here's the thing. Like, right now, mainstream science fiction is technically military science fiction. It just is, and it's kind
Yes.
of always been this way, but it hasn't at the same time. Oh, Bradford Walker's joining us. Uh, so
Hello.
hello. We're just about to finish up, actually. That's unfortunate. Oh well,
Sorry, you're late.
I've got a critique group to go to.
Um,
But but like here's the thing. Like the thing is, I value different things in the manga. I like Blame not because the story is amazing, but because it is probably one of the best drawn series period. Like, even though you can literally go from like volume to volume and the mangaka style changes completely, it's still worth looking at. You know, the violence is still entertaining, the power stuff is still fascinating. The guns that have range measured in kilometers is absolutely fantastic. um you know, like there's that, and then there's like Pluto, which is a serious look at an Astro Boy arc, or and these are all like manga I know, and then there's like One Punch Man, which is like the deconstruction reconstruction, like it is the ultimate reconstruction of an
Right.
entire genre. I don't think there would be My Hero Academia without One Punch Man. Like
Did One
as
Punch Man come first?
yeah,
Well, the manga did, yeah.
the web comic,
Or
yeah.
the web comic, I
Yeah,
should say. The web comic did. So,
like and it was like the web comic itself was a masterpiece before the guy.
Juan is an underrated writer. He is
Oh yeah.
a he's not just like he's thought of as a comedic writer as well. He should be because he's very funny.
Hmm.
But he's really more than like it's a disservice to think of him as a great comedic writer.
Hmm.
He is a great writer. Period.
Yeah.
Like he legitimately has the Moomin Rider fight in One Punch Man might be like my second or third favorite fight scene ever.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Uh, the Moomin Rider versus Deep Sea King.
Yeah.
Honestly, that entire episode, everything about it, it's just so masterfully written. Like it,
Hmm.
the it's one of those things where I take a step back for a second just to admire the craftsmanship because
Yeah.
like as you see the when you realize the reasons behind the very specific decisions that he made in how he told the story, and
Hmm.
how he ordered events, and like I can imagine, and I really really respect it, the way that he dispersed tension, the way that he held off on reveals in order to make them hit harder later, how he set up certain reveals for later and had them hit. It's all just so well done. And like
Absolutely.
in subtle ways that if you took the time to study it, you realize that there is a ton of care going into that whole episode of the anime, that whole arc, I guess, and that whole fight. And that is the perfect example of what you said about One Punch Man being a decon recon. Now, this was something that I know TV Tropes has a term for this, but it's a term that I've used. So for people who don't know what we mean when we say that, the decon recon or the deconstruction
Which
reconstruction is a
honestly deserves its
go ahead.
own live stream.
It does, but I'll explain. In fact, we really should do one on that, but I'll explain it briefly what we mean. The decon recon, the deconstruction reconstruction, is a type of story where you essentially strip the story down to its parts and criticize it. As in, for a good example of One Punch Man, superheroes, right? What is One Punch Man doing? Well, let's say you had one hero who was really, really powerful. In fact, he was so powerful that he could stop every threat on his own with absolutely no effort, and he didn't even really need to work anymore. What is even the point of superheroes, right? What's the point of all of these people striving to get better and go further and go faster? Is there even a role for them in society when you just have this guy there, right?
Hmm.
That's the question posed by One Punch Man. That's the deconstructionist aspect of it, because by seeing One Punch Man, it seems like the answer is going to be it's all a big joke, right?
Right.
Which
It
in a sense
deconstructs
it
the
is.
Superman.
Yes, and in a sense it is. The idea is that like if Superman really existed, isn't everything just kind of a cosmic joke? Who cares what anybody else is doing? Superman's here. There's a great comedic skit where like Superman meets up with Batman on a rooftop and he tells Batman we have to team up. And Batman just stares at him and goes, "Why?" He goes, "Well, your keen scientific mind." And he goes, "My keen scientific mind, you could shoot laser beams out of your eyes." So he goes, "What are you even talking about? Why do you need me?" And then they have the skit, and like Commissioner Gordon shows up at the end. It's like, I saw the bat signal. And he goes, hey, get this. He wants to team up. And Commissioner Gordon looks at him and goes, why? It, it's a really funny skit. But anyway, that's kind of the joke of One Punch Man in a sense, in a less direct way.
Except
The idea that
Superman doesn't want to team up. He's just kind of living his life. And he's a hero for
right,
fun.
Superman is living his life. He's a hero for fun, but everybody else doesn't know about him. But the question there is, doesn't that kind of make everybody else a joke? Doesn't that kind of devalue their achievements? Because what are they achieving? Somebody else has already achieved way more than they ever could. The only reason that they're even needed is because he doesn't know about what's happening, right? And that's the joke. So that's the deconstructionist aspect of One Punch Man that we're referring to. A decon recon, which always, if they're done well, will tend to be very powerful stories, by the way. Uh, Almost always, a well executed decon recon will be one of the more powerful types of stories you could tell.
Mm-hmm.
And One Punch Man does this exceptionally well. In a fight, I guess it's a spoiler, but One Punch Man's not really a show that can be spoilered. It's a superhero show. What do you expect? Uh, they have a fight with a monster called the Deep Sea King. And the Deep Sea King, over like 2 episodes of, by the way, in the anime, insanely gorgeous animation, uh, is absolutely tearing apart all of the heroes who come up to oppose it, just completely destroying them. A class, and the heroes are ranked into classes from S class at the top to C class at the bottom. And all of these heroes are just with extremely strong powers, super speed. Genos shows up at the end and is almost killed, and he's a cyborg who can shoot, flames out of his arms and whatever. All of these heroes show up and are getting decimated by the Deep Sea King. And Saitama is just who's One Punch Man, is just kind of trying to find his way to where the Deep Sea King is so that he can get there in time, and he could punch him, because
Mm-hmm.
Saitama knows just one punch. Saitama has absolutely no nerves. He has absolutely no doubt in his mind that he could beat the Deep Sea King with a single punch. So he's just trying to get there in time.
Mm-hmm.
And Moomin Rider is a Class C hero, and Moomin Rider is, I did a whole article on this, is the key character in One Punch Man. He is the linchpin of the story in a very specific way. And this is why. Moomin Rider is essentially the point of One Punch Man. He is a C class hero. He is the lowest ranked hero, and his power is that he rides a bicycle.
Well, no, he's the
And that's
highest
it.
ranked of the lower ranks. Like, you don't
Yeah,
get
that's
to be
true.
a better hero, a higher ranked hero, unless you're more heroic or more powerful than he is.
Yeah, that's true, exactly. And his power is he rides a bike. Like that's literally it. He rides a bike. But what's brilliant about the writing of Moomin Rider is that he is not framed as a comedic character. There's the meta joke of the fact that he is called Moomin Rider and he exists in a world of mega powerful heroes, and his power is riding a bike. But every time he is shown, he is presented as a serious character who is doing serious things. His actions are not mock. He is not a mocked character, which is very, very important. And what happens is Moomin Rider manages to beat Saitama to the Deep Sea King.
Mm-hmm.
Saitama gets lost or something. Moomin Rider makes it there first. And right as the Deep Sea King is about to kill everybody, Moomin Rider throws his bicycle at him and yells, "Justice Crash." And once again, what makes this scene, this is why I said the writing on this scene is masterful at every level, because every detail of every decision made is extremely intentional. Moomin Rider throwing the bike and yelling "Justice Crash," for example. Uh, That's an extremely intentional decision, and the reason that that decision was made is because they needed to show that that Moomin Rider was serious about this, but it's not a threat to the Deep Sea King. And Moomin Rider tries to stand up to the Deep Sea King, and of course he is beaten down very easily. And when the Deep Sea King says, you know, give up, you can't beat me, Moomin Rider says to them, it's not about winning or losing, it's about me taking you on right here and right now. And that's when the
Mm-hmm.
whole crowd rises up in praise of Moomin Rider. The idea behind that scene is, what is the value of a hero? Is there a value in a hero when there is a guy who could just beat down any threat in one punch? And the answer to this is yes. And we see the value of that hero in Moomin Rider. When everybody else is about to lose hope, they're struggling, they're going to die, seeing a lone man, powerless, stand up to a monster on their behalf is inspiring. And of course, we also see that Saitama reveals in the end that he is, in fact, a true hero. So that's the second question. Is Superman, going back to that, really a hero when he's never in danger? And that's the other question that the show asks. And Saitama proves to himself and proves to Moomin Rider specifically that he is a true hero when he sacrifices his own reputation in order to give the people hope. And that is why One Punch Man is one of the most brilliantly written shows of the 2010s.
And that's certainly a worthy analysis. Um, it's like it shows the importance of it. We would not have words to describe what is good or what needs to be done without analyzing the information. And we'll have Brian Niemeyer on with us next week to talk about not giving money to people who hate you, which I believe will tie into our analysis quite easily because essentially we get to beat on the bad. I hope you join us all next week. We love you, my audience, and I hope that you come and check us out. Thank you as always for being on the show, Anthony.
Of course, it's fun. I get to hear myself speak.
Ooh, have a good one.